Have you ever heard of babies sleeping in hanging cages? In the hustle and bustle of the early 20th century, a peculiar sight would often catch the eyes of passers-by in the urban landscapes. Suspended from the windows of compact high-rise apartments, one could see wire mesh contraptions, almost like bird cages, dangling over the busy streets below. But these weren't for birds. Inside these cages you'd find the most unexpected occupants, babies napping peacefully, oblivious to the world around them. This unusual practice of babies sleeping in hanging cages was a common phenomenon in the early to mid-20th century, particularly in crowded cities. The root of this practice was twofold. First, the lack of space in small apartments meant parents had to get creative with the sleeping arrangements for their little ones. And what better way to save space than to literally hang the baby's crib outside the window? The second reason, perhaps less pragmatic and more health-oriented, was the widely held belief in the benefits of fresh air and sunlight for a baby's health. The idea was that these hanging cages provided the babies with much-needed exposure to the elements, thought to be crucial for their development and overall well-being. A healthy dose of sunlight for vitamin D, and a breath of fresh air to keep the lungs robust. It was a different time with different ideas about child rearing. The image of a baby swaddled and secure in a hanging cage might seem bizarre, even alarming to most of us today. However, it's important to remember that what might appear strange or even reckless by today's standards was, in fact, a well-intentioned and widely accepted practice of the past. It was a time when parents, constrained by space and inspired by the health beliefs of the day, sought unconventional solutions to everyday challenges. This practice, while shocking to many today, was once considered quite normal. But how did this trend come to be? And why did it disappear, you might ask? Well, let's take a step back in time to the bustling city of London in the 1930s. The city was rapidly expanding upwards, with high-rise apartments becoming the norm for many families. But as families moved higher and higher, they faced a new challenge: how to provide their babies with fresh air and sunshine, essential for their growth and development. Enter the hanging cages. These curious contraptions, a cross between a birdcage and a baby cot, were hung out of the windows of these high-rise apartments. They were designed to allow babies to bask in the sunlight and get a breath of fresh air, all while their parents went about their daily chores inside. This trend quickly took off, particularly among the working-class families of London. The hanging cages became a common sight, swaying gently in the wind, high above the city streets. They became so popular, in fact, that the local government even began distributing them to families living in council housing. However, as the world plunged into the chaos of World War II, things began to change. Safety concerns started to arise about the hanging cages. Stories circulated of babies accidentally falling out, or their cages being dislodged by strong winds. These fears were compounded by the war, as families worried about the dangers of air raids and bombings. Moreover, societal norms and attitudes towards child rearing began to shift. The idea of leaving a baby unattended, even in a cage secured to a window, started to be seen as negligent. The practice of using hanging cages began to decline, and by the end of the 1940s it had all but disappeared. Today the hanging cages are a relic of a bygone era, a curious footnote in the annals of childcare. They serve as a reminder of how societal norms and attitudes can shape and influence the ways we care for our children. As times changed, so did the acceptance of such a peculiar practice. Looking back, the concept of babies in hanging cages can seem quite bizarre. We've journeyed through the origin of this practice, diving deep into its roots. Born out of necessity, these hanging cages were once seen as a solution for families living in cramped urban spaces. They offered a breath of fresh air for babies, a chance to experience the outside world within the safety of their homes. As we've explored, this trend saw a rise and fall, mirroring the changing societal and architectural landscapes. The shift in public opinion, the introduction of safety regulations, and the evolution of living conditions all played a part in the gradual disappearance of these cages. And so, the hanging cages of old have become a mere footnote in the annals of childcare history. While it may seem strange to us now, it's a reminder of how societal norms and practices can change dramatically